The role of the state in the socialist transformation of the economy of the U.S.S.R. Written by Kilovolt Ostrovedyanov. Introduction. The state as organizer of victory. The Soviet state, on its 30th anniversary, is credited with victories of world historic importance in economics, technology, and culture. These successes were not automatic. They were the direct result of the immense organizational work performed by the Communist Party and the Soviet state. A key feature of the Soviet system is the special economic role played by the state, a role that is fundamentally different from that of a bourgeois state. The new relationship between politics and economics. The article outlines a qualitatively new relationship between the state's political power and the nation's economy under socialism. Bourgeois state versus Soviet state. The role of the bourgeois state is limited to merely facilitating or retarding the spontaneous course of economic development. In the imperialist stage, it becomes a reactionary force that holds back societal development. The Soviet state, guided by the Communist Party, is the chief, decisive force that consciously and according to plan directs the socialist economy based on its understanding of economic laws. This is possible because it is a genuine people's state that is not only the holder of political power, but also the owner of the principal means of production, thus embodying the unity of political power and economic might. Main features of the new relationship: cognized economic laws. Under capitalism, economic laws operate like demoniacal rulers that dominate humanity. Under socialism, based on public ownership, these laws are transformed into the servants of society. They are consciously understood and applied through the policy of the party and the Soviet state, making this policy the vital foundation of the Soviet system. Unity of political will. Capitalist society is torn by antagonistic political forces, often leading to results that nobody desired. Socialist society, free of class antagonisms, possesses a moral and political unity of the people, rooted in socialist property. This unity, expressed through the leadership of the single Communist Party, ensures that the state's influence on the economy is united and powerful, and fully aligned with the people's interests. Active participation of the masses. Because workers and peasants collectively own the means of production through their state, these means are not a hostile force, like capital. This is the material basis for their active participation in carrying out state policy, which finds expression in socialist emulation, a source of creative initiative that ensures an unprecedented rate of growth. Concentration of forces. The ideological unity of the Soviet people under Marxism-Leninism allows the state to mobilize all factors, economic, political, and ideological, to achieve a single objective, a concentration of force impossible in bourgeois society. 2. The economic organizational function of the state. The economic organizational functions of the Soviet state are of exceptional importance and are destined to grow as socialism develops. 2 phases of the state. The author cites Comrade Stalin's theory of the 2 phases of the Soviet state's development. In the second phase, after the liquidation of the exploiting classes, the state's main internal task becomes peaceful economic organization and cultural education. The power of socialist planning, planned guidance of the national economy, is the most important part of the state's economic function. Socialist planning has the force of an economic law because it is an objective necessity for an economy based on public ownership. The essence of planning is not just figures and tasks, but the organization and direction of the living labor activity of millions of people. The state uses planning to ensure economic independence and defense, secure the undivided sway of socialist relations of production, establish correct proportions in the economy, and use reserves to rectify any disproportions that arise. Proportional development versus capitalist crisis. Under capitalism, proportions are established spontaneously through market fluctuations and are only temporarily corrected through destructive overproduction crises. Socialist economy is based on consciously established proportions and combines this with continuous and increasingly rapid progress. The state uses its reserves of labor and production means to revise plans as needed, ensuring rapid progress without the economic disturbances inevitable under capitalism. 3. The tools of state management. The state's management of the economy is exercised through both administrative authority and economic levers. Administrative management and coercion. National economic plans, once approved by the Supreme Soviet, acquire the force of state law, making their fulfillment obligatory. This requires the state to use coercion against those who violate planned discipline. The nature of state coercion is fundamentally changed. Under capitalism, it is used to suppress the masses. Under socialism, it is used in the interests of the people to protect labor and planned discipline against those who would disrupt it. For the vast majority who obey voluntarily, this coercion resembles the conducting of a good orchestra, as Lenin described it. Economic levers of planned guidance. These levers are based on 1. The factor of material incentive and 2. The application of the principle of the labor equivalent. Socialism creates powerful new material stimuli for production because work is for society's benefit. The worker's share is based on the quantity and quality of work performed, and the surplus product is used for the needs of the working people themselves. The socialist principle of distribution according to work is applied through various forms of remuneration, piecework, bonuses, workday units, which are a decisive lever for developing industry and agriculture. Cost accounting and the law of value. The principle of personal incentive is also applied to state enterprises through cost accounting. Each enterprise must work economically, reduce production costs, and fulfill its plan, with its material position dependent on its performance. This system is based on the principle of the labor equivalent, which is also the basis for commodity exchange. In socialist society, the law of value and commodity-money relations are not an elemental, dominating force, but are consciously used by the state as an instrument for the planned direction of the national economy, particularly through cost accounting, trade, credit, and finance. 4. A record of historical success. The Soviet state has achieved world historic successes by skillfully planning the economy and employing these new socialist motive forces. The 5-year plans. The first 5-year plan built the foundations of the socialist economy by carrying out industrialization and collectivization, thereby eliminating the contradictions between a progressive political system and a backward economy, and between socialist industry and scattered peasant farming. The second 5-year plan completed the liquidation of the exploiting classes and the technical reconstruction of the country, building socialist society. In the main, this consolidated the moral and political unity of the Soviet people. The Stalin Constitution was the corresponding change in the political superstructure to reflect the new socialist economic base. The superiority of the socialist system. These victories were achieved in a severe struggle against internal enemies, Trotskyites and Buchranites, and the hostile capitalist encirclement. The socialist system provides unlimited scope for the development of the productive forces. Its law is continuous growth, unlike the cyclical law of capitalism which requires periodic crisis. The author cites Stalin's 1946 speech noting that the U.S.S.R. transformed from an agrarian to an industrial country in only about 13 years. While the capitalist world is on a path of cyclical development and dreads a new crisis, the socialist system emerged stronger from the war and moves confidently forward. A fundamental law of socialist economy is the continuous rise in the material and cultural standards of the people, which is both a political goal and an economic necessity for stimulating labor productivity and demand. Conclusion. the path to communism. The Soviet state is now working on the historic task of the gradual transition from socialism to communism. Citing Stalin's 1946 speech, the author lays out the grand prospect of overtaking the most advanced capitalist countries and creating the production technical basis for communism. This involves creating an abundance of consumer goods, abolishing the distinctions between mental and manual labor, and between town and country. The Soviet state will play a decisive role in this task. Its economic and cultural functions will grow to gigantic dimensions. As survivals of capitalism are eliminated, state guidance will increasingly resemble the conducting of a good and well-trained orchestra, resting more on authority and public-mindedness than on compulsion. However, citing Stalin's development of Marxist-Leninist theory, the state will continue to exist even under communism as long as the capitalist encirclement has not been destroyed. Therefore, it is necessary to continue strengthening the socialist state as the chief instrument for building communism.